Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today I'm covering Gilmore Girls, Season 1, Episode 5, Cinnamon's Wake. I'm just so enjoying going over this season. So many interesting things, so many interesting characters we meet, and it just really lays the groundwork for such a good show. So I can't wait to get into this one, and I can't wait to talk about it. Hey guys, I just want to take a second and say if you're enjoying this show, please check out my Patreon. Go to patreon.com, search Real Housewives Recaps, or check the comments below and I'll put a link. And for $1 a week, you can support my show and get 4 bonus episodes per month. I'm covering Scary Island, like the greatest season of Real Housewives of New York. So check it out. Thanks so much. So it's Friday night dinner. Richard is in Germany, so we don't see Richard at all this episode. Emily's explaining that Claudia died, and Lorelai says, "Who? Your cousin Claudia." Claudia! She's yelling it. And she says, "Your cousin for all intensive purposes." Lorelai says, "I've never met this woman." And Emily says, "I thought we could all go to the funeral together." And Lorelai says, "Mom, I couldn't go if I wanted to, and I don't know this woman." So it doesn't really go anywhere now, but it comes back in a funny way later. So that's the opening scene for this episode. Get the opening credits. You know how I feel about those. Love those fall pictures. Love the song. And then we start out at Lorelai's house. So we see Rory coming out, and Rory says, "Shouldn't you be baking?" And Lorelai says, "Shouldn't you be knitting?" But it's the Chilton bake sale today. So Lorelai just keeps saying, "I have it covered." And Rory's freaking out saying, "Listen, you have to pitch in. It's a big deal. I have it covered." We see Lane dancing, which is so cute. Lane has such strict parents. She goes over to Lorelai's house to actually listen to music, eat junk food, and dance around because she's not allowed to do that at her house. So then we see outside Babette and Maury walking Cinnamon in a wagon. And Rory says, "Okay, our town is just weird." And Lorelai says, "Thank God." Rory says, "Okay, I'll see you this afternoon." Lorelai says, "For what?" Rory says, "Mom, the bake sale." Lorelai says, "I was kidding." We see Rory waiting for the bus to get to Hartford to go to Chilton. And Dean gets on behind her, scares the crap out of her. And it's so sweet. This is how they kind of start their flirtation off. So he's saying, "Thanks for helping me get the job at Dosey's." And they make small talk, and it's just cute. It's cute to see him starting and how it all began. Then we're at the Independence Inn. It's Michelle and a whole big group of Frenchmen. So they're trying to talk to him, and he says, "I'm just a simple man from Texas," and won't speak French to him. Lorelai has a talk with him. He has to straighten up, speak French. They think he's kidding. They all laugh. That afternoon, we're at Chilton for the bake sale. Suki has made she's made everything. It looks delicious. I want to eat everything that Suki makes. Fantastic looking table for the bake sale. So this is where Max Medina shows up. So I really want to know your thoughts on Max. Are we fans of Max? Did we not care for Max? Just let me know. I'm very curious. I don't want to give too much away because I know a few of you haven't seen it and you're kind of watching it with me the first time. But dying to know your thoughts on Max. And we'll keep talking about him as it goes on, of course. So he tells Lorelai to call him Max. She keeps calling him Mr. Medina. At first there's tension because remember he wouldn't let Rory take that test because she was a few minutes late. And she got into it with the headmaster and him about it. All worked out, no problem. But he's into her, and he kind of lets her know and asks her out. And Lorelai's like, "I don't know, don't you have rules? What about Chilton rules?" And Rory would freak out, and Max is trying to talk to her and says, "Listen, no pressure. How about we just go drink coffee together?" And Lorelai's into him, so she finally relents and says, "Okay, I have my business class, but after around 4 p.m., I could possibly walk into, whatever coffee shop if you want to be there." We go over to Rory and Lane. They're walking around town. They run into Babette and Maury with Cinnamon in that wagon. And they explained that they had bad clams. Bad clams at Al's Pancake World. I want a shirt that says Al's Pancake World. That place cracks me up. So, yeah, unfortunately, this does not bode well for Maury or Cinnamon. After that, Rory sees Dean in the market. She's like, oh, look, the store. I had to pick up some stuff. Elaine says, oh, okay. I'll go with you. Rory's nervous. She wants to go by herself. She says, oh, never mind. I don't have to go in. And Elaine says, well, I guess I'll go home. And Rory says, great, bye. Well, Rory ends up going in the store. So she's scoping out Dean, but she runs into Miss Patty. Miss Patty is talking to her about plums. And what are you here for, honey? Oh, I see what you're here for. So Miss Patty knows what's going on. Rory asks her not to say anything, and then Kirk comes over. He talks to Miss Patty, and he says, I'm assuming you're going to pay for the food you're eating. And she says, and you are? I'm the new assistant manager, Kirk. Next time you put something in that mouth that doesn't belong there, I'm going to remove it and call the police. And then Rory goes to just check out. She just buys one head of lettuce, and Dean is her bagger, and it's so cute. She's so nervous. Then we're in Hartford. We see Lorelai going to that coffee shop where she told Max she would be. She walks up to the counter. Max is sitting there, and she acts surprised to see him. Oh, hi, Max. And so they kind of get to talk to each other. Hey, how weird that we're running into each other away from school. Anyway, they decide to cut the cuteness, and they're just talking, and Max says he thinks they should date because they're both attracted to each other. Lorelai says, I'm attracted to Pie. I shouldn't date Pie. And Max says, I know you're concerned about us dating, and that they should just try it. So they talk back and forth, and it's interesting, and she agrees to go on a date with him. Then we go over to Luke's. It's Suki and Lorelai having lunch there, and Lorelai's trying to tell Suki about this amazing guy that she met. And Suki's excited for her, and she says, it's Max. You met him at the bake sale. And Suki's kind of half paying attention. She's putting together her lunch, and she tells Luke, hey, you forgot the onions. Well, she ends up going behind the counter and adding things to all these people's food, fixing it up for them. So Luke comes out and yells at her and tells her not to be behind his counter anymore. Lorelai's telling Suki, I need to talk to Rory about this. I'll tell her, and if there's any weirdness, I'll just cancel. Well, right at that time, Rory comes in, and she says, Mom, you better come. It's Cinnamon. So they go over to Babette's house, and unfortunately, Cinnamon has passed away. And Babette and Maury are both very upset, obviously. It's really sad. They love that. They love that cat. So they're trying to figure out what happened. Maury thinks it's because of the clams. Babette mentions that Cinnamon ran across a wax floor, hit a lamp, and didn't wake up. The vet says, no, it wasn't that. It was that Cinnamon was very, very, very old. Maury says he'll never eat clams again, and Rory says, neither will I. So later that day at the funeral, Michelle comes by to drop off something for Lorelai and judges them for mourning the cat. Miss Patty arrives. Suki and Luke both bring food. Suki's becoming like a drill sergeant about her food and how she wants it put out and wants everything in a certain way, very specific. And Luke just sets down his big bag of diner food and says, dig in. Rory goes to answer the door, and it's Dean. He's delivering drinks for everybody. And they're nervous around each other. It's so cute. Lorelai comes to ask her about it. Rory's being weird, won't really talk about it, and just tells her that he goes to her old school. Well, after being weird with Dean, she ends up following him outside. And she sees Mr. Medina at her front door. And she calls her mom out, and Lorelai realizes, oh God, it's Thursday. And Rory thinks, she says, am I in trouble? Did the school call or something? Lorelai says, no, let me just come back in a second. Rory says, tell me now. And Lorelai says, he's here to pick me up. And it dawns on Rory, oh no. So then Lorelai goes over to talk to Max and says, I should have called you. We have a little emergency. And Max says, Rory, is Rory okay? She's fine. The neighbor's cat died. So Max is like the neighbor's cat. He thinks she's blowing him off. And she has to convince him, no. He really did die. I'm so sorry. I'm going to just have to do this another night. So it takes a little convincing. But Max is like, okay, I'll call you. So then we see Suki and Luke. At first they're arguing about food. But then they're making up. She helps him make a certain sandwich or something, so they're getting along. Lorelai's looking over for Rory. Kirk comes to Miss Patty and apologizes for what happened at the store yesterday. You can put anything in that mouth that you want to. Miss Patty says, I always forgive once. Lorelai sits down to help Babette do the dishes. Babette's crying and saying Maury's the best thing, and she doesn't know what she'd do without him. And Lorelai's like, what? And she said she saw on Oprah that after losing a child that your divorce rate goes up. So she's worried after losing Cinnamon that Maury's going to leave her. Lorelai ends up opening up about, not wanting to be alone. And Babette says, with that ass? And Lorelai says, well, I want someone who wants me more than just my ass. Maury plays piano, and Miss Patty's doing the drums, and they're just having a nice wake for Cinnamon. Lorelai tells Suki what happened about Max showing up, and she can't find Rory, and she really wants to talk to her about it. Rory's sitting outside, and you think it's going to be Lorelai that finds her, but nope, it's Dean. Dean comes up and says, I'm sorry, and Rory says, for what? And Dean says, well, I've been kind of bugging you lately, and I like you, and I get that you aren't as into me. And Rory finally has to speak up and says, I'm interested. And then she says, I've got to go. So then Lorelai finally finds Rory, and she explains this was going to be our first date. And Rory says, when were you going to tell me? At the wedding? Lorelai says, no, by the rehearsal dinner. Lorelai asks if she's mad. Rory says, well, you lied. And Lorelai says, I'm sorry, I won't date him, I promise. And Rory says, I'm not saying you can't date him. It's just kind of weird. Lorelai says, the last thing I intended to do was to date your teacher. You can't always control who you're attracted to. Think about Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie. Lorelai says, I promise, I will tell you everything. They hug, and Babette and Maury, we see them for a second. They're hugging. They walk out to look at the Big Dipper. Back at Lorelai's house, the phone's ringing. It's Emily. She says, where have you been? I've been trying to call you all afternoon. And Lorelai tells her, at a wake. And Emily said, whose? And Lorelai says, the neighbor's cat. And Rory's trying to gesture to get her to stop talking, because remember at the opening scene, Lorelai wouldn't go to her quote-unquote cousin's wake, but she went to the neighbor's cat's wake. And so Emily says, you skipped your cousin's funeral to go to a funeral for a cat. So it's just something else for Emily to be pissed about. The final scene, we see Rory and Lorelai talking. Lorelai saying, we never settled the dating your teacher issue. I won't see him if you don't want me to. Obviously, Lorelai really wants to, but she wants to make sure Rory's okay with it. And Rory's just kind of messing with her, saying, okay. And Lorelai says, if there's anything that makes you uncomfortable, I'm out of there. And Rory's still saying, okay. Lorelai says, I'm going to be up for a while if you want to talk more. Okay. Rory says, hey, do you think you could keep him out late on Thursday? I have an oral exam on Friday. I'd really want him to sleep through. So then Lorelai gets her approval. And that's it for the episode. I love seeing the neighbors. I love seeing the town. The town's so weird and fun. I wish I lived somewhere like that. It's so cute. But that's it for the episode. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I love recapping these. So much fun. So many fun characters. So much to talk about. But check out all my other shows. I'm recapping all kinds of stuff. So take a look. And thanks so much for watching. I read all the comments. I love them. Leave me a comment below or find me on Twitter at Real Recaps. Hope you guys have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.